transformation, and I got to know a dear brother in the Lord a little over a year ago, and his name is Brian Davis. He shared some of his story with me, and I love what the Lord has done in his life. Talked about that amazing grace, and so Brother Brian, I want to invite you to come and share that word with us.
Thank you. How are you guys doing tonight? Good, that's good. All right, you are going to hear how Jesus Christ has been at work in my life longer than I realized. Okay, let's start. This is my testimony of Jesus Christ. I'm giving you my testimony of my faith in Jesus Christ and how I've came to building this relationship with him. So my edited or short version to start is, let's go back to when I was 15, a young and impressionable youth. Struggling with identity issues because of my two nationality heritage, let's admit it, I was lost. I was lost at that time. I was in high school, 10th grade, when my journey down that rabbit hole started. I started with experimenting with marijuana, and then eventually it went to cocaine. I later in life came to find out that I was searching for something, acceptance and approval outside of myself and not in the right places. I was looking for all the right things in all the wrong places. Well, this eventually led me deeper into that rabbit hole and led me to a life of crime that I was not proud of. I mean, I would do something stupid or steal or lie or manipulate or whatever it was I had to do to get that fix. The crime came when I got to harder drugs like crack cocaine and ecstasy by the time I was 16 and 17 years of age. A year or so out of that addiction that I had started at marijuana, experimenting with marijuana, the gateway drug. And then eventually I got in trouble. I went to boot camp. I got out, did good for a little bit. Then I moved in with my cousin, she came from California, when I was 18. Well, shortly after that, I was arrested because me and my friends were breaking in soda and vending machines. Yeah, it sounds harmless. I thought it was harmless. Right? I say not, though, now. But we sure thought it was harmless, being just 18-year-old kids trying to get high. We were not really hurting anybody, we thought. We didn't think we were hurting anybody. Well, the police did. So, bam, we all got arrested and went to prison at 18. I got out when I went to prison when I was 18. Some of them did. A couple of them, I don't know if they did or not. I got out when I was 20. I did a year and a half. So I read some of the Bible while I was incarcerated, but just out of boredom. It was just out of boredom and curiosity, kind of. So fast forward to me being 23. I'm going to skip through the other stuff. To me being 23, I did the same cycle of going in and out of Jackson State Penitentiary. So I go back again, my third time, and for a petty violation. I would always get released, then just not report a few times, and then say, "See ya. I'm going to go do drugs and quit and get high. I'm not going to report." That's how I thought it. That's how my criminal mind frame was. But something happened to me between 23 and 24, that third time in Jackson prison. I was fed up, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I just couldn't do it anymore. So in Jackson, all we're allowed is the Bible to read. Well, I was reading it a lot for about a good week or two, like almost all day, when I had a chance, almost all day. Now, I was enamored and fascinated by all these great stories of the Old Testament. So that's where I started. I was like, wow, in my mind thinking like, wow, is this stuff that I'm reading really true? Like, who could make all this up? There's no way you can make all this up. Well, I couldn't conceive it. So most importantly to know, while I'm reading the Old Testament and thinking about my son and my ex-fiance, the woman I was with at the time, being out there and needing me, I just had terrible guilt and shame for who I was and what I was doing and the selfishness that I was doing and how selfish I was. I had a broken spirit and a contrite heart at this moment, crying. So one night when the lights went out, at 11 o'clock they had lights out, I decided to pray to God, like sincerely pray for the first time ever in my life. So as soon as the lights went out, I just finished reading some of the Bible. I put it in the middle of my bed, I bent down on my knees, and I was sincerely honest to him. And I prayed. I said to God, God, if you're real And all these stories I've been reading are real in your book, in this book. I said, will you prove to me you're a real God? Because I can't keep living like this. I said, I will serve you all the days of my life. As soon as I finished saying that prayer and asking God to forgive me, as soon as I finished that prayer, I immediately felt this weight lift off my shoulders and this incredible joy and peace like nothing I've ever felt in my life. It was something from out of this world. It was far better than any drug I've ever felt by a long shot. It was otherworldly, like a surreal spiritual experience. And then I smiled from ear to ear, and tears of joy began pouring out. My sorrow turned to joy. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew that God was real. Then immediately after, I realized all the bad stuff I had been doing. This moment was when I knew I was born of the Spirit, spiritually reborn. Like this stuff just doesn't happen to everybody all the time. I knew I was a new creation. It was like nothing in the world mattered anymore. That's how I felt. Nothing in the world mattered anymore. In fact, I threw out all my we were allowed cigarettes at that time in Michigan Department of Corrections. I threw my cigarettes out, my matches out. I told people what happened the next morning when they broke us out for chow because they kept asking me, why do you keep smiling? Man, you're in prison. Why are you smiling all the time? All I could say was, God is real. I'm telling you, God is real. That's all I could say. God's real. So moving on, eventually I came across this verse because I was stuck in my Bible after this experience. John 15:16. Can you pull that up? Did I tell you to put that there? Okay. Right here, this struck home with me. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. I knew then that he chose me, that it wasn't an act of my own accord, that this was predestined, designed. Johnson. So you've chosen me and chosen you. I knew he had some special purpose for me, but I still didn't get it. Moving on. I still didn't get it yet. Moving on, I got released and walked faithfully for some months, but I was still young. So I eventually fell into backsliding and more sin, all the while conscious that this God, who is so great, could destroy me whenever he wants. I had that in the back of my mind the whole time. And I was scared, still doing dumb stuff, backsliding, still making bad choices, still hanging out with the wrong people, but all the while wondering, why are you still doing this? I'm thinking, why am I still doing this? You know God's real. So eventually me and my fiance got hooked on heroin and doing petty retail fraud. Well, one day when we were stealing, we had our kid with us. She was supposed to leave the store. She was supposed to be in the store with my son. I'm sorry. With our son, leave the store with our son. While I returned, she's supposed to leave the store when I returned the items. We were doing item return fraud. Anyways, we got caught because she never left, and she went to go steal with him on her own. She decided to go steal her own stuff. So loss prevention and the state police came and grabbed us and arrested us. They said they had been watching us the whole time as soon as we walked in the store. They opened a CPS case and put our son in foster care. Now, for 2 years, I did everything the state wanted. I quit using drugs. I got clean. I got off parole. I did counseling, drug testing, psych evaluations. Even after I got off parole, I quit using the drugs. I stayed away from it all. I wanted my son back. I told myself did counseling, everything they wanted me to do. It still wasn't enough, so they terminated our parental rights. They terminated hers first and then mine's after the 2 years. It was September 2012, I got the final notice in the mail saying that my rights were terminated. Once I seen that, I quit caring about anything anymore in life. I told myself, I want to use drugs and escape this pain till I die. So for almost 2 years, I drank and used weed and pills and sometimes meth, whatever would let me escape that loss and pain. I even prayed to God and tried going back to God, never being successful. When you're surrounded by drugs and criminal activity, now I was never successful because I was always surrounded by drugs and criminal activity. So I got kicked out of my cousin's house and moved to Arizona. This was where everything went really downhill, in Arizona, man. I started using meth all the time shortly after I moved there and selling drugs and drinking. I was out there, I was in Phoenix. I was out there all by myself. Didn't know anybody out there. My mom helped me with a little money here and there to get by. She was there for me. I was there for about 5 months and seen every dark thing imaginable in the underworld out there. Hearing terrible stories of real evil and wickedness. The people that were around there doing real evil and wickedness. So yeah, I got in a lot of trouble for some serious crimes like robbery and identity theft and multiple drug possessions. I did 5.5 years on a 6-year prison sentence out there. Again, talk about seeing and being around bad people with no escape. It was almost like a hell. Oh yeah, when I was in prison, I'm talking about when I was in prison. I was stuck in there for 5 years in Arizona. It's hot. It's the same thing every day. It reminded me of like a living hell. And you couldn't go nowhere. I couldn't escape it. I had no choice. And that's what I was relating this to, like, this is my living hell. And so I did my 6 years. So I read the Bible here and there while I was in there, doing the back and forth thing, backsliding, even in prison. Yeah, they had drugs in there too. So I got out, and after all that time, I couldn't believe I was free again. My family came to visit me. They were so excited to see me again. So excited to see me again. I was so excited to see my mom. And like three times in that 5.5 years, I seen her. My brother, I seen him once in that 5.5 years. So the rest of my family left, but my mom stayed to help me get on my feet. The rest of my family had to go back and come back to Michigan. So my stepdad flies out there to spend a week with my mom. They left to go to Sedona, I believe. They went to go to Sedona on their own little getaway for 5 days. Now I'm by myself, and that old temptation came calling. And yeah, guess what? I answered it. I answered it. I contacted this woman I knew and I used to live with, who I sold the meth with when I first got arrested. I got a hold of her on Facebook. I took a Lyft to Phoenix, and I got high for 3 days. I came back. My mom came back a day or two later. She knew I had used. She knew I had used right away. So we left to get food. We went to McDonald's. We went to go to McDonald's, and I told her, after we ate the McDonald's, I got out to smoke a cigarette, and I told her, I said, I don't know why. I can't stop getting high. I don't know what this feeling is. I don't know why. I can't stop, and I got out. I smoked a cigarette. I lit a cigarette. As soon as I lit that cigarette, I doubled over in pain, the most terrible pain in my life, in my rectum, like right in my buttocks. It was immense pain. I had no clue what was wrong, but I knew I needed the hospital. So she took me to the ER, and they gave me an x-ray, and they said, your intestines are perforated. You have an infection. We need to admit you as a patient. I still had no clue how serious this was. I didn't even think it was that serious. And so they put me on IV antibiotics. They admit me putting on IV antibiotics. And overnight, I had an abscess. The infection was an abscess, actually. And then they put me on IV antibiotics, and the antibiotics caused it to rupture. They caused the abscess to rupture. And when it ruptured, that's when I was in deep trouble. Surgeons and nurses came rushing in after they did another x-ray, and they said, we need to get you to emergency surgery now. Like, this is imminent. Now I'm scared to death. Now I'm scared. I'm like, wow, can I die, God? Really? So long story short, the surgery was successful, but I spent 14 days in recovery from the surgery. Man, my whole body felt like it was hit by a car. It was pain from head to toe. Terrible pain. Took me like 4 days before I could even get out of bed. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. So I got released from the hospital, and I go see my primary care physician, and he walks in the room, and he looks at me, and he looks down at my paperwork. And he looks back up at me, and he says, Mr. Davis, he says, do you believe in God? Or does your family believe in God? Because I don't know how I'm talking to you right now. You're like, you should be dead. And I said, yeah, I believe in God. I gave my life to Jesus Christ years ago, and I decided, because I was still young and hanging around wrong people, I said, you know what? I told Jesus, I'll come back to you later, because I thought I was young, I was like, but you never know when you're going to die. That's the thing. That's the seriousness of it. And I told him, he said, well, yeah, guess what? God gave you another chance, because he said, you had a 4% chance to survive that, but they didn't want to tell you in there, because I guess people, like, freak out and stuff when they hear stuff like that. They're how serious they could die. So he said, yeah, man, you're a miracle. Like, literally, you are a medical miracle. So I knew then, so I'm going to take you to this verse that dawned on me. When he said these words, Isaiah 54:17, take me there. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and this is their vindication. That was the wrong verse. No weapon formed against you, here it is, I got it. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. I'm not drugs, alcohol, car accidents, punctured, ruptured intestines. I've had other close calls with death through my life I didn't even mention in here, and that hit home with me. No weapon formed against me was going to prosper. And I'm evidence right now up here talking about spilling out my dirty laundry, and I'm not ashamed. I can't be scared of it. I'm not ashamed. He called me to do this. Also, I know that I also pertain to this, or my life also pertains to this verse, Luke 15, 4 through 7. Let's go there. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go out after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep. I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. I knew Jesus Christ came back for me, that I was that lost sheep. I knew when I strayed, and he came back and said, no, I see more in you than this. I'm not done with you yet, Brian Davis. I'm not done with you. And it all clicked to me at once. I had to go through now I'm headed up later, 6 months goes by. I'm in my Bible. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm healed up later on. Surgeries are done. About 6 months goes by. I'm in my Bible. I come across 1 Corinthians 3:18. Did you put that over there? 1 Corinthians 3:18. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you to put that up there. Do not deceive yourselves. If any of you think you are wise, by the standards of this age, you should become fools so that you may become wise. I thought about that. The reason why he had me going through all this stuff is because I had to become a foolish person, or learn the foolish things of ways of life to become wise. And that verse clicked to me. I'm like, that's why I had to go through all this stuff. And if God knew every day of my life and every path I would take, he planned it all out. He knew I had to do foolish stuff to become wise. And it all clicked to me at once. I had to go through all that foolish stuff in life in order to become wise and useful to God. Because if I had nothing wrong in my life, I would have never had a reason to reach out and call on God when I was 23 in prison. So shortly after then, I'm searching for a Bible study. I see the Gospel Center, Holly Calvary Studies. I think my mom brought that to my attention, actually. She found that for me. Thank you, Mom. This is when I met Cliff, my pastor. And since then, you all know everything else that God has been up to. You guys know everything else because you see me here all the time. But it wasn't till I said, God, I'm going to seek you with all my heart. And you said, I will find you. So I did. And I did find him. Ever since then, life wasn't perfect, but I begged and prayed for him to change my desires, to make me hate the things I used to love and love the things I used to hate. And I seek his will and righteousness every day. And now he told me I'm going to preach. And now he told me I'm going to preach. So here I am, like an open book, ready to serve God, because I remember all his grace and mercies through my life. And how could you turn down something so good and go back to something so bad? God forbid. No one's sins are too great for Jesus Christ. I've seen people far worse conditioned than me, did a lot worse stuff than me, and they've been saved. No one's sins are too great for Jesus Christ to fix. No one is too far gone either. I have I'm done with this testimony, but I have some statistics that's been on my mind. I research a lot of stuff that's been on my heart, and it's on my heart all the time. Now, as a Christian, I would like you guys to think about this. I think about it a lot. On average, 150,000 people die every day, according to some websites or the CDC, or 120 per minute that comes out to. I question in my heart how many of them were saved and knew Jesus Christ. How many more will go by dying before the gospel is spread throughout all the nations? Man, Christians, we have some work to do. We have some work to do. Also, here's another statistic. I forgot another one, but this is a good one too. Also, it's estimated that 105 billion people lived on this earth out of the world's history. 5.5% are alive today. My question, how many of those people that died out of the 105 billion knew Jesus? Besides, obviously, Jesus was one of that population. He had to be that large number. And that is the end of my testimony. Thank you. You want to close this in prayer, or do you want me to? Or?
Oh, we're going to have some fun.
Okay, let's have some fun, man, because I love it. I love it.
So you've told me a lot of this story, but